to our Christmas Solidarity Vigil. We are here for Julian Assange, the publisher of Wikileaks. Quite a lovely crowd with us today on a cold British weather cold day. But our hearts are warm.
Yes.
And that's what makes the difference. Our hearts are warm, are filled with solidarity for Julian Assange, the publisher of Wikileaks, a website dedicated in spreading knowledge, a better understanding of our world, so we can form informed decisions and ideas. We can be better citizens, we can experience a better democracy. Wikileaks, in all the years, have given us a treasure trove of information about what's been done in our name, war crimes, corruption, how government and diplomacy conducts itself behind closed doors. The work of Wikileaks led Julian Assange behind the cruel walls of HMP Belmarsh, where today we gather to honor him and to stand in solidarity with him. 10th of December 2022, today it's Human Rights Day, and there's no better defender of human rights than Julian Assange.
Yes. Yes. Bravo. Bravo, Julian Assange.
The Wikileaks work has assisted the Chagosians in their efforts to get their home back, victims of colonialism. Wikileaks publications gave them hope, armed their struggle with knowledge. And as they're struggling for their human rights of getting their homeland back, so have hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people around the world benefited from the work and publications of Wikileaks.
Bravo. Gracias, Wikileaks.
So in Human Rights Day, we honor the work of Wikileaks and we stand in solidarity with Julian Assange. Why is he imprisoned in Belmarsh, a maximum security prison in the UK? Why is it so? Because the United States government has unleashed a decade-plus war against the publication of Wikileaks, against the people's right to know, against evidence of corruption, evidence of war crimes. And here we find ourselves today. For many of us, we've been on this struggle, supporting efforts to free him for more than a decade. But the last year has been a very difficult year. Very difficult year because exactly a year ago, on the 10th of December, 2021, the High Court ruled that Julian Assange could be extradited in the United States of America. It's an abomination.
Yes.
That decision does not reflect the moral and political values of this country.
Yeah.
That decision, which was made by a British judge, influenced by diplomatic assurances
I don't believe it.
offered by the United States of America, was a betrayal of his own role, because diplomatic assurances have got nothing to do with the law, but everything to do with politics. So a judge sitting on a British court was politically influenced
Yes.
by accepting diplomatic assurances. Amnesty International has called these assurances a sham.
Yes.
That judge who made this decision disgraced his office
Yes. Shame.
and does not reflect the moral values and the political values of our society in this country. But it is an indication, following the Julian Assange case, of how things work when the only superpower of our planet is wanting to get Julian Assange in prison in America. Does this leave us entirely without hope?
No.
We're not having it.
We never
No.
give up.
This struggle is a political struggle, and as it is a political struggle, we have political agency, which we activate every day of our lives. We are political actors. Whether we vote, whether we express our opinions, whether we sign petitions, whether we come together like today, we are political actors and exercise our full democratic rights and stand up for his freedom. The last year, on the legal front, despite the disappointment at the High Court, his legal team has been launching 2 separate appeals. And I'm going to read to you a little bit about that from the wonderful reporting of independent journalist Tarek Haddad,
Thank you.
because it's important we understand what to expect from now going forward in the campaign. So on the legal front, on June 23rd this year, lawyers for Assange submitted 4 grounds of appeal against Priti Patel's decision to have him extradited. They argue Patel erred in deciding that extradition was not prohibited by Article 4 of the UK-US extradition treaty, the clause that prevents extradition for political offences.
Yes.
The lawyers also argued that Priti Patel erred in her application of specialty arrangements with the United States, essentially furthering agreements under the extradition treaty on 3 occasions, namely that Assange ought to be protected from charges that carry the death penalty for conduct outside the extradition request and from criminal contempt proceedings. Because you see, his lawyers believe once Julian Assange is in the United States, further charges will be laid at his doorstep for additional Wikileaks publications. And it is the truth. If you consider the backlash of CIA at the time, the Secretary of CIA, Mike Pompeo, his speech on April 2017, as a result of Vault 7 publication from Wikileaks, you will understand what I'm talking about. Currently, Vault 7 is not part of the list of charges they've accused him. So that is one of the appeals that is taking place in the legal front. The other appeal was done on the June the 30th. Assange's lawyers filed a further 12 grounds appeal against the January 2021 ruling made by then District Judge Vanessa Bareja at the Central Criminal Court. That was at Westminster Magistrates Court, when it decided that Julian Assange was not going to be extradited for humanitarian reasons, but she accepted every single point of law from the Department of Justice extradition request.
Shame on Baraitsa.
So
Shame.
on that front, his lawyers have submitted a request saying that the request by the US was an abusive process, saying that as Bareja was wrong in not making this finding, which, if made, would breach under Article 5 of the European Convention of Human Rights. They further argued that extradition should have been prevented under the provisions within the UK Extradition Act of 2003 with respect to extraneous considerations, that it was unjust and oppressive by nature of lapse of time, and that it did not meet the dual criminality requirements under Section 135. Why do I go into these details? First of all, it's extremely important that we are not at the end of the road on the legal front.
No, never.
We're not.
No.
Second, it's important for Julian Assange supporters to understand where we are. to understand some of the aspects of the legal case, so they'll be able to follow it as we go forward. Now I have got 10 copies of those points made in the appeal against, yes, so basically after this summary, if you want, I can give you. I've got 10 copies of the appeal against the Patel's decision and 10 copies about the appeal for Vanessa Barretta's decision. So come and find me. I've got copies, I'll give you one.
And please, I would like to ask you, when we have those copies, to who we can write, to which person.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So those attempts are not the only legal avenues that his legal team has taken. An appeal to the European Court of Human Rights was submitted at the end of November this year. Now, the official campaign has not made a statement, an extensive statement about it, on what grounds. But if you read the extensive previous legal steps that they have taken, we hope that we get to hear from them exactly what are those grounds for appealing to the European Court of Human Rights. And of course, there is another court case in America where a lawsuit was filed in the Southern District of New York saying that Mike Pompeo oversaw and directed an extraordinary campaign of illegal spying on Assange attorneys and others inside the Ecuadorian embassy in London, where Assange had taken sanctuary as a political asylee. Pompeo not only directed the efforts, but his agents, with the help of Sheldon Andelson's security detail, also recruited David Morales, then CEO of UC Global, to implement the violations. Plaintiffs include renowned civil rights activist and human rights attorney Margaret Ratner-Kessler, media lawyer Deborah Beck, and national security journalist Charles Glass and John Gotts. The plaintiffs are suing to protect their fundamental constitutional right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures in violation of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. So on the legal front, we have several cases going forward, and the next 12 months will be very, very interesting. Keep yourselves informed in the news. And something I want to ask, there is an awful lot of articles that publish false information. For those of you who have the time and inclination to write to them to correct the record in the Julian Assange case is extremely important. Extremely important. Now, the legal case in Spain we haven't heard from, but that also continues. And we hope to have good results because they are also pursuing Mike Pompeo.
Mike Pompeo must be prosecuted. Prosecuted and investigated.
And thrown into jail.
He's a criminal, Mike Pompeo.
Absolutely he is.
He's a criminal,
Yes,
Mike Pompeo.
He has been served with his papers. He has been served. But at the same time, the good news also comes from, so extremely active on a legal front, defending Julian Assange, but also at the same time extremely active defending Julian Assange and reaching out to the political leaders of Latin America. As recently we have seen Kristen Parkinson and Joseph Farrell doing a rounds. Already earlier in the year, the Mexican president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador,
my president from Colombia, Gustavo Petro, they are going to do one line.
I have his name here, Elsa. So, starting with Mexico's president supporting Julian Assange and welcoming John Shipton, the father of Julian Assange, and Gabriel Shipton, the brother of Julian Assange, and giving Julian Assange the key of the Mexico City. Absolutely amazing honor to Julian Assange from Mexico. And we move on to the Brazil's president-elect, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva.
Bravo, Brazil. Bravo, Brazil.
And we have representatives of Solidarity Group from Brazil here with us today. Fantastic. We will never forget the solidarity the people extended to us in London outside the Ecuadorian embassy in past years when Lula was imprisoned under the clutches of lawfare, and how supporters used to go and chant outside his prison, "Good afternoon, Mr. President, we're here to support you." And they taught us, and we did the same with Julian Assange. Good afternoon, Julian Assange. We're here to support you, as we do today. As we do today. The solidarity was strong from Brazil then and continues today. And today, the president-elect is meeting with Christian Krafenson and is pledging his support for the freedom of Julian Assange. But also Colombia's Gustavo Petro has visited with Joseph Farrell and Christian Krafenson, and we owe them a lot. We owe them a lot. Including Argentina's Alberto Fernandez. There was a surprise.
Cristina Fernandez, bravo.
Of course, the vice president. So the political struggle continues. On top of that, we had the surprise development where media that originally collaborated with Wikileaks, the New York Times, the Guardian, El País, the Spiegel, and Le Monde, after a decade of silence, united their voices together to demand that charges are dropped against Wikileaks. So that was well due support. Of course, every single non-governmental organization in Europe and around the world has condemned the charges of Julian Assange.
Bravo.
We have to ask ourselves one question though. Is all this enough to free this man? Is this enough to free Julian Assange? Is this enough to push for an acceptance of a new kind of publishing that offers real light, throws real light into how governments conduct themselves behind closed doors? Because this is ultimately Julian Assange's work with Wikileaks. And the answer lies mostly on us, the public, to push and move the political machinery by taking part in actions publicly and demonstrate that this is unacceptable. This persecution and prosecution is unacceptable. So I want to thank you today for joining with us in this amazing action of solidarity, and particularly want to thank Davide Dormino and the Free Assange Wave, who have supported us in carrying out the earlier act outside Belmarsh. So let's have our cake.
And Jamie for getting the chairs.
Thank you so much to Jamie for providing the lovely chairs.
Jamie.
And